Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, friends.
It's questions worth pondering. What question do we have to ponder tonight, Carrie?
We are going to be looking at the detransition that is building steam. It's growing in our nation and
Yeah,
around the world.
yeah, we're going to look at why are people detransitioning
hmm
after transitioning, right?
Yeah,
So, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank
Are you?
you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I am doing great. I did, every week on a Tuesday, I always say how busy I am, right?
You're a busy lady.
No, it's hard. I work all day, right? And then I have to make dinner for my little fur babies.
Such a good mom.
Yeah, I'm going to post real quick on Telegram that we're actually live because I forgot to post that we're live.
Okay.
But I hope everybody's doing good tonight. Carrie, while I do that, do you want to just talk about the things we're going to cover tonight, and then I'll hop into our metrics?
Yeah, we're going to look at the cultural influences. We're going to hear from some people who have detransitioned. We're going to look at how it's happening with these young people. Like, why did it actually happen? I'm looking for our bullet points. You usually do them. And what were their experiences after transitioning, before and after. So we're just going to cover it all because we did the other transgender episode a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty upsetting. A lot of people are wondering why it's all going on, and we just felt that it was important to take a look at something that's happening that is good, that's encouraging.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm just throwing a tweet out on Twitter as well.
Okay.
So yeah, should
Well,
we hop into it? Let's start with maybe some metrics around uh, the trans movement and the number of people who detransition. You know what I found interesting when I was researching all the metrics
what?
is there are a ton of studies on um, people who transition,
hmm
and they barely cover detransitioning. It was really hard to find good metrics around that because it seemed like everything I found was different.
Well,
And
and the people in the transgender community don't like the transitioners. They don't like them. When they speak out, if it's at an event, they'll crowd around them. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the detransitioners right now. So it's a combination of things, I think, why
I
we're
think
not
so
getting.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting that some of the metrics are, you know, kind of, uh, they, how do I put it? They sort of emphasize certain things or dramatize certain metrics. So take the stuff that I'm going to show you is interesting information, but I highly recommend folks like research for yourself and try to find your own information. But with that, let's hop into some of these metrics. Uh, the first page I have to show here is based off of the census, actually. This is census.gov data. And they did a survey. I think maybe this is the first time they've done as a part of the census doing the sexual orientation and gender identity. So it was measured as to what were you assigned at birth, what sex were you assigned at birth on your original birth certificate, and that's this column here. And then the next question is, do you currently describe yourself as male, female, or transgender? And that would be this here. So it said that 0.6% of adults aged 18 and over, and remember that's 18 and over, identify as transgender. Now, we'll be showing a trend about the kids because it's kind of interesting. And what do they show? Do they show for female and male? 0.6% of females, 0.6% of all. And then yeah, it's hard to hover over this, but so 97.4% of adults who were assigned female at birth currently identify as female. So
what was that? What was that last one?
97.4% of adults aged 18 and over who were assigned female at birth currently identify as female.
Okay.
And for the males, 0.4% identify as female. So anyway, I found that a little bit kind of interesting. This also, go down to page 4, actually. So this is about people who transitioned and then have regret. This actually shows, and this is from sexchangeregret.com. Up to 20% have regret. Sex changes are not effective, says researchers. They're 19 times more likely to die by suicide after surgery. So one of the big pushes for people having to affirm their children as another gender is their reasoning is because children will commit suicide if you don't affirm them, right?
Yeah.
So, but they say that people who change their gender are 19 times more likely to die by suicide.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting. And then,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And they're on more drugs after they transition than before, which is kind of shocking. You know, you think
yeah,
everything that you need to transition, and that there's actually more when you change back, when you once you do transition, you take even more drugs. You're on drugs the rest of your life.
yeah. Yep, you are, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, it's because of hormones, isn't it? Like,
And I think that's linked to the high suicide rates too, because I mean, hormones regulate the whole body. They affect your mind, your mood. I mean, so these people, I can't imagine what it feels like.
I can't either.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. And I want to say hi to Herbie.
Yeah.
Herbie is in our Rumble chat. I hope folks
Hey,
join us on
Herbie.
Rumble. All right. So these next metrics, and we'll get off of the metrics and get into the adults and children who transition. But so this one has 237 survey participants, so that's not really a lot. 92% were females at birth, so it's not really a representation of both genders either. So I just wanted to call that out. But the big thing I wanted to point out here is the reasons for detransitioning. So 70% of the detransitioners realized that their gender dysphoria was related to other issues. So it wasn't about, wanting to be another gender. It was about other things.
That was diagnosed as gender dysphoria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Um,
there's a reason why it's mostly weighted female is
mhm.
because it's largely female. I mean, I know you're gonna
I
show more
don't
men.
know though. I mean,
Well,
maybe
that's
for
what
the
some of my
actual surgeries, maybe you're right.
yeah, they're targeting adolescent females, and, I don't wanna interrupt your metrics there,
No,
but
please do. This is a
well,
combo.
yeah, I mean, because I found a few things very interesting, and before I get into my metrics, that you know we're still in an information war. We went through it with COVID, and we're still in it right now, and it's full on. And it's a war of perceptions, and it in information, and it drives behavior. And the target are these children, and it's driving them to very serious behavior of changing their gender. But um, and it's largely weighted in the United States. That is what I found really fascinating. So we're really seeing a U.S. perspective, because something is happening in the rest of the world that we're not hearing about. Our media is not talking about it. Sweden banned gender affirmation care in May of 2021,
Oh, did
and
they?
yeah, and they were the first nation to do it. And the UK in October of 2022. Did you hear that?
I have not heard
Right?
that the UK either.
Yeah, they
Nope.
shut it down, and they call it the American care model. They shut it down. And
They do. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and so we're leading the way, unfortunately, but they closed down their gender clinic, Tavistock Gender Clinic, and they replacing this with psychoeducation and psychotherapy. And then there was also a Toronto study all the way back in 1975, that they resumed in the 2000s and continued it. It was done by the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. This one had mostly boys, 3 to 12, but it revealed that only 12% of the gender confused youth continue to struggle with gender dysphoria. They outgrew it. Okay. And what the 10 to 12% that didn't desist, meaning just get off the hormones and continue, they were majority gay.
Mm.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the medical community knows that it's a lie. And I think this is why they're going after the younger, these younger ages, because they do outgrow it. And, so it's obvious it reveals how captured our American science, medicine, media, and academia are, compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting as these children grow up 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
The percentage of the transgender population that detransitions, because um, right now it's fairly low, but it's higher than I thought it would be, to be honest. Um, this chart represents how many transgender there are per 100,000 population.
Mhm.
So wanted to show this because even though we're talking about detransition tonight,
Mhm.
I think a lot of the stuff that's out there is pushing um, the fact that this is normal, like it's normalized,
Yeah.
and that it's like most of the population agree with this, and
Mhm.
it's prevalent everywhere. But if you look, and I don't know if you can see this good. Maybe you can see it okay.
Mhm.
If you look though, um, you can see the various like Rhode Island has 523 people out of 100,000.
Mhm.
It's very low,
Yeah.
you know.
They just have
Let
a
me
loud
find
bigger megaphone.
like what is Wisconsin? Let's look at Wisconsin. I can't even. This chart's not very good because well, here it is. Basically, the color coding. Let's use that. 700 for the darkest color. And the top one is North Carolina, 658 out of 100,000.
That shocked me.
Isn't that a shock?
Yeah, that one didn't seem to fit.
Right, and Arizona too,
Yeah.
553.
Yeah.
But still, these are low.
Still, absolutely, compared to
And
the
if
population.
we look at the lowest ones, you can see Missouri, 154 out of 100,000 people. Like, what is that? 0.001%. I,
Yeah.
but yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
And
So oh,
go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, if you could, I don't know if you're scrolling down, but if you could pull up, compared to this, the chart that I have for 1A,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
because those are people that identify as transgender, right? But this chart actually shows the use that are diagnosed, and that's the difference, right?
Ah, that
Yeah.
is such a good contrast, Carrie, because yeah, and look at how much it's grown from 2017 to
In 4
2021,
years, it's almost tripled.
almost tripled in just a few years.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a big push for it.
15,000 just over in 2017 and over 42,000 in 2021. I don't
Look
even
at
know what.
California.
Oh, I know, it's crazy. And they're all liberal states. Look at that.
Look at the spike in New York
Yeah.
after 2020.
Yeah.
Look at how they
So,
spike after 2020. Look at that.
yeah,
In all these states, there's a huge spike.
the information war is working. And I mean, look right there. And the thing about the 5G warfare, whatever, that's what it is, fifth generation. The targets don't know they're being targeted, and they've been targeted, and it's working. And I know the people that are coming. We're going to get to the good stories, but the doctors are a large part of this. It's not just media and the corporations that are pushing it, even though they're getting so much pushback. But yeah, this one was really upsetting.
Very upsetting.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's a
one
result
of
of the media industrial complex and the medical industrial complex working together right there. Right?
Yep, absolutely. Uh, I think I'm done with the metrics part actually. Um, should we delve into just the detransitioning for both adults and children, and why were they allowed to transition and impacts they faced from transitioning and all of that?
Yeah, if I could first just go, I think I sent you it was an article, but in it
Oh,
revealed, I don't know if I gave it to you to pull up. It's
that's
okay.
okay. Just tell me what it is and
A
I'll pull it up.
post-millennial article, maybe we could just link it, but it was a recent worldwide studies that revealed 29.8% of the average, with the average age of 19, right, after 4 years of transitioning, are detransitioning. In the this is actually the United States. Other nations, that's almost 30% in the United States.
I'm sorry, I don't see the article you sent me.
Okay,
It's
that's
not
okay.
on my list.
We can post it later. Oh,
Okay.
Marissa, good evening, friend. Um, and she says, yes, may God have mercy on the deceived. Absolutely, because they have been. And there's a clear agenda. But so almost 30% in the United States. Other nations are much lower, but it's because the push has been here. Remember
Mhm.
our good, if I were the devil, all the things I would do. And
Yep,
one of those were I would go after the ripest apple on the tree, which is
it's
America.
true.
And so the push it really is largely here and Canada, but mostly here. And so there's also the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, and a study. This is what was heartbreaking, that females transition because they don't feel right in their body. And and a lot of those diagnoses are from like body dysmorphic syndrome, anorexia, other body issues that
Mm.
like teenage girls have. Like, I don't know about you, I don't know about the gals watching, but we all go through awkward periods where, you know, we're just not happy with our body for whatever
I
reason.
was reading about that. Some of the questions they ask in the assessments they do, which they don't really do an evaluation of these kids.
No.
But one of the things I ask them is, um, like, do you not like your period?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you uncomfortable going through puberty? And
It's like
it's like,
leading the
that's
witness,
a
right?
sign that you should detransition or you
Yeah.
should transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's going to be a
So,
lot of detransitioners come 10 years from now.
oh my gosh, yes. But the males transition for a different reason. It's because they identify with or as the other sex. But the females, it's because they have body issues. And the studies also are revealing heavily that the target is
But that's normal.
it. Yeah, of course it is.
Having body issues is so normal for a teen.
Absolutely. I mean, crazy stuff we did as teenagers, my girlfriends and I,
Well,
with our pop.
when you go through puberty,
Oh,
it's traumatic for everybody.
well, and boys actually, sorry guys, but I mean, it's just a fact that the brain swells in adolescent boys while they're going through puberty. And so they makes them a little crazy. I mean, girls were crazy too for
We
different
love you,
reasons.
boys.
Anyway, we love y'all. But they are targeting adolescent girls. And so the reports from around the world, they showed that they went from predominantly preschool boys with gender dysphoria, okay, to teenage girls with no history of it, right? So that
Mm.
that is, it seems clearly they are targeting adolescent
Oh,
females.
it's obvious. As we go through some of this,
Mhm.
we'll see more proof of that because it's so sickening
And there is
how easy it is to transition.
oh yeah, absolutely. But there was one more element of this study, and it's that the detransitioners in this study were 70% female,
Interesting.
and 90% of those were white, and over 80% graduated from college or completed some college work.
Hmm.
And
That's
we all know what's going on in our universities,
oh yes.
right? And so a massive change in the psychological landscape of girls in the Western world has taken place.
Yeah, I your point about bringing up the universities
Mhm,
is very interesting. We're going to do a show on academia
mhm,
and the impacts to society and our kids,
mhm.
but that's really that's so true. Um, yeah, we'll get into more of the social and cultural things as we move along.
Yeah, so I
Uh,
just wanted to share that one study because it was really shocking.
it
Um,
is shocking.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about transition adult versus child.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that,
Well, why don't
Carrie?
you? I just finished talking a lot. Why don't you share?
Yeah, I don't have any. Well, maybe I do. I gotta check. But
Or the
I feel
impact
like there's
it
a
shows.
huge difference because when you're an adult, um, you've gone through your life stages,
Mhm,
and even though I personally wouldn't do it, I don't agree with it.
mhm,
But when you're an adult, you do what you want.
mhm.
Um, but with the kids, oh
Totally different.
gosh, this gets me.
Oh,
With there's so much.
mhm,
There's so much, but with the kids, uh, a huge push to the parents. Like if a boy suddenly wants to put on a costume or put on a dress, they suddenly are telling the parents, "Oh, he wants to be a girl."
mhm,
You
mhm.
know, kids don't think that way. They're just playing. They're just having fun.
Yep. Children
Or
don't begin to reason until they're 9 years old, the 4th
right.
grade.
And if a girl is more tomboyish,
Mhm,
they're trying to suddenly that's a flag that they want to be a different gender.
right.
And then that's for the tiny ones. But then when you get into a little bit older,
Mhm,
then I think for kids, it's more about peer pressure and
Mhm.
like it's like a in thing,
Mhm.
like a fad right now. It's a
They're
fad.
selling it hard, and the
Yeah,
kids are buying it. I
the
mean,
kids are, and they're
they
making parents feel guilty if they don't affirm it.
yeah. I mean,
So,
they're guilting them, they're shaming them,
yep.
they're making them afraid. I mean, think about all the things. I mean, if we talk about the spiritual warfare, because it is good versus evil, right? It's all the same things that Satan did in the garden,
Hmm.
what came as a result. It's, fear, doubt, shame, guilt, right? All the same things. They're doing this to the parents, and these things work.
Right. And the impacts of doing that. So now we're talking about
Mhm.
detransitioners. Uh I guess I do have a few things to share.
Okay.
So like here's one person. I literally lost my organs. Why
Mm,
detransition teens regret changing their gender.
yeah.
I mean, they literally, like, if they are giving them hormones and they have them have surgery,
Mhm.
they are giving girls mastectomies,
Mhm.
and chopping off genitals of
Mhm.
the boys, and some of the stories that I heard. But yeah, this is just, it's really interesting. There's a lot of people now coming out, and the other impacts of detransitioning is not only irreversible body damage,
Mhm.
but that they have regrets for, but they're also being attacked for speaking out about it.
Yeah,
So I've
absolutely.
got, yeah,
Well, they
um,
also are it's the ongoing drugs, and
mhm,
I read a gal that, the voice box, the larynx is permanently changed even if you go back and detransition.
yeah,
And she talked about drug withdrawal, during when you didn't get your like toward the end of right before your next testosterone, it's like you're
mhm,
a junkie. You're withdrawing, and then when you detransition, it's another whole level of withdrawal and joint pain, and of course infertility. But there's also a lot of other serious illnesses, including higher risk of cancer and thrombosis, and I mean a whole slew of other illnesses, diseases that they're at risk for.
yeah. There was one I was watching. They said they ended up with, I think it's called C. diff, which is,
Oh yeah, it's a bacteria in the colon.
yeah, it's critical. Like, you have to be in ICU for that.
My
So,
mother had that. My mom had that.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. My mom at the end
yeah,
also.
yeah.
Um, I have just a very quick little clip here. Um, all right, let me turn the sound on. It's on, and I'm going to mute us for a second.
Thank you so much for your time. I know this is a tough story for you, but tell me, what made you decide you were really a woman?
Good morning, Andrew. Um, I didn't really decide that I was really a woman. It just came. I was suffering with anxiety and depression. I was drinking heavily, and I was cross-dressing, wearing women's clothes, going out socially and stuff like that, and driving around, spending a lot of time as a woman. And it was after my wife died, I decided I want to be a woman full time.
Sorry, forgot we were muted. So this man clearly had some mental health issues. It
Yeah,
was after his wife died that he decided he wanted to be a woman full time.
yeah.
He's detransitioned and has regrets on that.
Mhm.
Um, the other outcome of an impact is nearly half of patients who had bottom surgery suffer surgical site bleeding later, and there's a lot of medical impacts.
Oh,
Um, They said there, here's a tweet. The fact that there's even a need in Canada for the first vaginoplasty post-operative care clinic, they had to create a clinic
hmm.
for post-operative care is alarming. Just the fact that they need a clinic for that.
Well, this is, I wasn't sure I was going to bring it up, but there was a gal who was transitioning and she went back. Her name was Sam, but she, within 2 years, suffered vaginal atrophy.
Mm.
And maybe that's why that clinic is open, because that is something that happens to women that transition to be male.
Yeah, but like that tweet said, it's alarming that they even have to have a clinic like that because
But it's happening within 2 years. So like all these women probably, right? I don't know. I mean, and then the doctor told this gal that they would only recommend, the only thing they could recommend was having a hysterectomy. So it's like more drugs, more surgeries. Yeah.
lifelong lasting
They're-
impacts.
Yeah, they're lifelong patients. And this gal, the same gal, she was approved for a transition after just 2 hours of private counseling.
That's what I was hearing too. Like
Yeah.
one video, I mean, I could show a million videos. You
Mhm.
wouldn't believe how many things I bookmarked. But one said it was a 30-minute call and they called in a prescription for testosterone.
Okay, so Planned Parenthood is getting in on this too.
Uh-huh.
And I read several where after 15 minutes, they got their prescription for testosterone and started their transition. So,
Really?
Planned Parenthood, they just like, what does transitioning have to do with, anyway, we all know what Planned Parenthood is in the business of, but
We sure do.
yeah. And so, that's why it's so easy for these kids to do it, and oftentimes without their parents knowing. This was there was hair loss that this gal experienced.
Yep.
Is there so
I've heard
many
that
stories,
too.
right? But this was really sad that she felt. I mean, all of it is, of course. They had double mastectomy, but that she felt numb. That she didn't have any heights of emotions. So it was just like a I don't know, what do you call that? Just
I don't know.
numb.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is there a name for it? I don't think so.
It's, I mean, usually that's like clinical depression, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. But that gal,
Numbness? What do you mean?
like emotionally, she has no highs or lows.
Oh,
Like,
emotional. I thought you meant she was numb down,
oh no, sorry, no.
I thought physically numb because I heard those stories too.
Yes. Well, the atrophy, if you want to read about that, I wouldn't want to talk about it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's bad.
horrible. It's
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 bad.
horrific.
It really is. And these poor young women, it's heartbreaking. But that gal, she did transition back and she's learning how to love her body. And I think that that's what these doctors are missing. And again, we know they have an agenda. It's all part of a really large agenda. But a lot of this is just this body dysmorphic syndrome, this not loving their bodies, not, I mean, there was one gal who wasn't boys weren't attracted to her. And so she thought, well, maybe she was a cute boy. She just wanted to be loved.
Yeah, it sometimes it has nothing to do with gender. It just has to do with
Most of
emotional issues or
Most-
wanting to fit in and be cool because
Right.
it's the current fad.
most of the time. And several other gals had sexual abuse or had been raped. Right. And so then they just don't want to be a girl anymore. They feel they'll be safe if they become
But
a
again,
boy.
that falls in the mental illness.
Exactly. So all of this mental illness, they're just diagnosing everything. I mean, and autistic children are preyed upon. And there was a doctor who it was in the Project Veritas video, but we're not showing that one. But anyway, he was talking about this boy who had been at this clinic for mental for therapy, for psychotherapy, because he was having issues. And autistics, they're brilliant. My nephew is autistic. They're amazing.
Many of our friends are.
I know. I mean, one of my best girlfriends has Asperger's, and she's the smartest person I know. It's amazing. But my nephew, they tend to be very introspective, and so they think about these things, and they're more easily manipulated as children. And, the doctor was so flippant. He was like, yeah, he was here for, therapy. And then, we diagnosed him with gender dysphoria, and he's getting his vagina next week. Like, that was the attitude. It's just mind boggling. So, yeah.
That is mind boggling. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much all the media I have as far as adult versus child transition and their impacts. I think you have a video though you wanted to show.
Yeah, this is from a documentary. It's the Detransition Diaries, and it's called Saving Our Sisters.
Okay. Yeah, let's watch it. It's a trailer, right?
Yeah, it's a trailer.
Yeah. And was this movie banned? Or
It was a different one that I sent you that they.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we're not.
Yeah, I noticed that some of those documentaries that are coming out have been banned.
Yeah.
What was the name of that one? Was that Affirmation
It was the
Nation?
Affirmation Generation.
Generation,
Yeah,
Affirmation Generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they banned them on Vimeo and then brought them back, but they banned them again because the video's gone. But you can, I think you can find it on Rumble and YouTube if you search for it.
Yeah, it has there's a lot of information in the Affirmation Generation if you can find it.
It's a really good one.
Mhm.
All right, let's play this trailer. What's the name of this one? The Detransition Diaries?
Yes, Saving Our Sisters. Yeah.
All right. Saving Our Sisters.
From when I was very young, around 5 years old, I felt like I was limited in what I could do in life as a girl or as a woman.
By the time I was about 13, I was starting to feel really depressed. I started self-harming. I started developing an eating disorder. I was introduced to a belief system. If you don't fit in, that's a sign that you're trans. If you don't like your body, then that's a sign that you're trans. And if you transition, all of these problems will be fixed.
When I was 22, I started injecting testosterone into my body so that I could medically transition from female to male.
Pretty much as soon as I turned 18, I made an appointment. I went to Planned Parenthood. One appointment took about an hour.
I called Planned Parenthood. We had about a 30-minute phone conversation, and then I was prescribed testosterone over the phone.
I was saying stuff like, oh, I think that I'm gonna be so much happier after I transition. Like, I'm really depressed now and I'm suicidal, but everything's gonna be so much better after I transition.
I have to say there was a small, underlying anxiety, beneath the excitement that was a fear that I might be doing something wrong.
My life just became a total disaster.
And then right after the surgery, I had been hit with these awful feelings of having made a huge mistake, undeniable, just oh no, what have I done? I was looking down at my body and seeing these weeping gashes on my chest and just having the most awful feeling.
Every year we don't stop this. How many hundreds or thousands of young girls like me, like some of you, how many of them are going to leap at the chance to have their newly lumpy chests flattened out again by mastectomies before they stop being sore?
I was thinking about that and realizing I don't really feel better.
It just finally hit me that oh my God, this has all been a mistake, everything.
I also don't really feel like a man. I just feel like a woman who has had her breasts cut off.
It wasn't enough for me to just detransition and get on with my life. I really wanted to understand what went on, what happened to me, and I wanted to understand what was going on in the world.
We do our girls a disservice when we lie to them and tell them they don't have to be women. We tell them they can be anything they want to be, but we have forgotten to tell them to love being who they are.
I wanted people to know that there is life after detransition, even if you've made serious physical changes.
Woman, women, mother, mum, girls, daughter. To those people, the peddlers of transgender ideology, these are not your words to give away.
These are not your words to give away.
It's so powerful.
So powerful. Sorry, I got to stop muting us because I forget that I muted us.
That's okay. So it does, I know that males are a part of this too. I'm just very emotional with these ladies, and now learning that females are more targeted. They are the target audience. And it's just so sad because they are sorry, that video. They just want to be happy, and our culture is just always pushing happiness. You'll be happy if you do this or if you have that, and happiness, is based on circumstances that change constantly. And so one of our questions was, what gap are they trying to fill?
Yeah, they think that they will be happy if they transition, but then they realize after that that's not what was going to do it for them and make them feel better.
Yeah. I mean, clearly.
And they're not getting help from the mental health community. The doctors, like, they're not putting them through a psychological evaluation before the physical. They're just like, you have to affirm. They're trying to say that affirming is a good thing, but affirming immediately is dangerous.
There's no psychotherapy, and I just, I always bring it back to the spiritual battle again, and we're believers here and Christians, and so I really just feel like they're longing to fill a space that we all have in us that only God can fill, and that brings us joy, and joy is not dependent on circumstances. You can be in the worst circumstances and still have it when you have that, and I love Ecclesiastes, the book. It's Solomon, but I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind, and vanity of vanities, all is vanity, right? So it doesn't matter if it's knowledge, wealth, beauty, power, and we may enjoy the things in the world, or the fruits of our labor, but and it's not like, we can't. I'm not trying to be a killjoy, but it's really the thing that holds the value and never changes is our relationship with God. And I'll have more to say about that in our final thoughts, but that's what it seemed to me, because there was a gal in another interview I watched. She said, I was just chasing something that I could never, but she actually said it. I was chasing something that I couldn't catch.
Her hole couldn't be filled, but
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But when you're in that situation, especially people who grew up being sexually abused, and I don't think that even occurs to them.
No.
That gap is what it is seeking God, and He will fill your whatever you're longing for. Yeah, and every situation, I'm sure, is different, whether it was from indoctrination or from trying to fill a hole. Yeah, very, very sad situation there. Do you have anything more as far as that before we hop into the cultural and political influences?
Well, I did want to mention that I was watching an interview, again, Project Veritas, but it was in a New York hospital where they're actually doing transitioning on undocumented children.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. I saw the guy who was being interviewed, and he said, we don't discriminate. I wouldn't live in, I wouldn't be here if we, you know what I mean? That we don't, it's all inclusive, and we just trust them with their intake papers, what they say. They don't need any documentation, no ID, no parental consent. So that's why the children are being transition. Some of them, many of them, it's just because the regulations aren't there. And anyway, and
Yeah.
the parents are practically being blackmailed. So, but the main thing, though, before we go on to the cultural, is that the impacts of the transitioning when you're a child and detransitioning as an adult, there are no studies and there is no evidence that a transition child can even transition as an adult.
What do you mean?
Like fully become back to
Oh, can detransition?
Yes, right. If they do this to a toddler as an adult, there's no evidence, there's no studies that shows that they can detransition.
Wow.
Yeah, especially if they do it before puberty. I mean, there
And
are
that's why they're trying to get them younger,
exactly.
because oh gosh, it's so sick. It's so sick.
Our NIH has changed the age that, well, they're funding a study to change the age from, and this came through a FOIA request, from 13 years old to 8.
For
They're
what?
to-
Age of what?
to transition. They're funding a study
Oh my
to,
gosh.
yeah, they're studying it.
Oh,
They
you know
want
what?
them transitioned at 8. I mean, we know that some are even doing it as toddlers. I don't know how it's all regulated, to be honest.
And can you imagine when these kids grow up and look back and see what their parents agreed to? However, a lot of times, and in some states, the children can go through this without parental consent.
Yeah.
And I was watching a video. Gosh, I need to blast that out unless I already did. But this guy was filming. He's in the Navy, and the DoD has health for all of the armed forces.
Mhm.
So this happened to be the Navy, but it's all the armed forces.
Mhm.
There's the DoD manual says that parents can access their child who is under 12 years old, their medical records online, but 12 and over, they can't. And the guy asked about it, and they said, well, you can go into the doctor's office and request them, and you can get them. But if you go and look at the details behind that, the only thing they can get is like vaccination history, just basic stuff. Nothing. They will not release anything related to mental health.
Wait,
Or
is this to the parents? Is that what you said?
yes, to the parents. It's
Wow.
children's records.
Well, this part of this agenda is it's separating, obviously, the left from the right, the races, all the polarization, but it's separating the child from the parent and delivering the child to these people, the medical profession that I mean, they are delivering them. It's sick.
It is sick. And this gal who was presenting to the soldiers was so arrogant.
Oof.
And it was I was stunned. My mouth dropped open. And I hear a lot of stuff, like we research everything.
Yeah.
But this one shocked me because this is our military. And so people, go look into that and don't use your military's health care if at all possible, because they're trying to get to your kids. They're trying to get to your kids. So we are. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we didn't show the story, but I think a lot of people know because he was in the news. He was on CNN. Chris Beck, who became Kristen Beck, he was a Navy SEAL.
Yep.
And that was in 2013. And now 10 years later, he's detransitioned. And the VA just grabbed onto it. And they're like, yeah. And the actual doctor at the VA is like, okay, so you're transgender, like first appointment. And we're going to write a book. We're going to do like they had him already writing a book.
Hmm.
And I mean, and he got so pulled in, and I mean, if you watch that video or that interview, Robbie Starbuck interviewed him, and it's heartbreaking, but you know, he's out now warning young people. I mean, he was an adult, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah, Robbie Starbuck's doing a lot of exposing. I highly recommend you go watch that interview. It's sad.
Yeah.
And so we chose, I mean, we're going to show some more sad things.
Well, it's hard to find a really uplifting story, even though they're getting their birth gender back. It's still a whole wretched business.
It's a whole wretched business for
Yeah.
sure. And honestly, that's probably a good segue into the social and cultural influences.
Do you want to play the 3A?
Sure. Is this the long one?
No. Well, no, I don't.
Or did I already play the long one?
You played the long one.
I already played it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and watch this Tucker Carlson segment.
It's a Korean woman. But 6 months later, he's decided he's had enough. Now he's transitioning back to being a British man. We thought we would ask him what that experience was like. Ollie London joins us tonight. Ollie London, thanks so much for coming on. So why did you decide to become a Korean woman? Who told you that was possible?
So obviously I've had a difficult time with my gender identity struggles. I was never unhappy with how I looked. So I started changing. I started dressing as a Korean woman. And I realized that was a big mistake and I just want to be a boy. But, you know, is it any wonder people like me and young people want to change their gender when we have the normalization of this in our schools in this country? Children are taught from a young age, from the age of 5 in some cases, that it's okay to change their gender. It's okay to, you know, wear a skirt. It's okay for a boy to use a gender neutral toilet when it puts girls at risk. This is the new norm, and schools are teaching about toxic masculinity. They're eroding the alpha male. The alpha straight male has been eroded. You know, Tucker, what happened years ago when kids used to go to school, they used to idolize Superman and astronauts. Now kids are being pushed this radical ideology. They're taught to idolize weak men like Harry Styles, weak politicians like Beto O'Rourke. Why is this happening, you know? And is it any wonder people like me fall victim to this, that I had all this surgery, I tried to change because, you know, I kind of fell victim to this mentality. I'm an adult, but, you know, these kids can't make these decisions on their own. They're being pushed this radical agenda, and I'm grateful that I've come out the other side. I'm grateful I found God. But, you know, I want to speak up for these kids that are confused with their gender. A lot of kids have gender dysphoria, and, you know, that wasn't a thing 20 years ago, Tucker. This is what's being taught in the school system.
May I ask you a question? And I'm not mocking you at all. It's a sincere question. Did it make you happier? Did you feel when you, quote, transitioned and started living as something that you weren't, did you feel like you were that thing, and were you at peace inside?
You know, I've never really found happiness until recently. So I was always struggling with my looks, as most kids do, especially as a teenager. Between, you know, the age of 11 to 13, kids change, and kids start to question themselves. They start to question their looks, their identity. They have self-esteem issues. This is normal. I used to really hate the way I looked, so I thought having all this surgery, trying to become a girl, dressing as a girl, trying to be more feminine, I thought that would make me happy. I've realized that was a big mistake, and I feel like, you know, if I was born 40 years ago, I wouldn't have done this. It's what the woke culture is pushing these days, what we see on TikTok. It's the new normal, and this is so wrong. It's really affecting our kids, and the school boards have a lot to answer for with this.
I agree with that. A lot of people are unhappy inside. That's normal. But pharmaceuticals and plastic surgery aren't going to fix it, of course, as you know. Ollie London, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
They want you to think it's the new normal.
Yeah, they're pushing that for sure. It's absolutely not, though. So I mean, he had only done it for 6 months, and so that was a pretty rapid turnaround. And he seems fairly well adjusted, considering everything he did. But it's a very different story when it's the children or someone who's been, you know, for many, many years and tries to turn around.
Yeah, it's that video actually kind of puts everything in a nutshell. It's being pushed on our kids from woke ideology. and not just our underage minor kids, our
Mhm.
kids in colleges too,
Mhm.
our
Absolutely.
adult children.
Mhm.
And I think people are very impressionable, even some people as adults, you know,
Mhm.
those who like to be popular
Mhm.
or be a part of a bigger
Mhm.
community or
Mm.
something like that. I think they're very impressionable, but kids are most impressionable.
Absolutely.
And
Again, it's part of who we are as human beings, and that space that God. I'm going to share a quote later about that space in us. It's like a heart shaped, hole that only God can fill. I mean, it's how we're made, and so
Mhm.
whether a child or an adult, you know, if they're searching for those things from the world, it's never going to be filled. And it's interesting that he mentioned that he found God. He said, y-
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I'd like to hear that part because that was part of his journey. And so,
Yeah.
mhm,
And I think more people who are transitioning today, because there's a surge in it right now,
yeah,
is not because of a hole that needs to be filled. I think more of today, from a cultural standpoint,
mhm.
society standpoint, is about it's a current fad.
Well, but what is that? That's the what, but the why is they want to be loved. They want to be in
Well,
relationship. They want to be a
that's
part.
true, but like
You-
groups of girls are going detransitioning at the same time.
to
There
be a.
was one, there was one story where their coach, like they were all friends. There's these four friends, and their coach announced to them that he was a trans
Mhm,
and going to transition.
mhm,
All four girls, just because they looked up to their coach so much,
mhm,
and who knows what the coach told them, right?
mhm. But
So
again, I mean, look at it though, look a little bit past that. Were they getting approval from their coach? They wanted to identify, like to be part of something. It really at its root, we're social beings. We want to be loved, we want to give love, we want to be a part of something, whether it's family, friends, a group, and at its core, that is that basic need.
well, and I think mostly, like, yes, adults want to be loved and accepted and all that. But when you are a teenager, like everything is so dramatic and so
Mhm,
much more, important. It's more important to fit in as a teenager.
mhm.
Um, and yes, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you,
You
by the
you
way.
but you just look for that approval in a different place with your
Yes.
girlfriends, with your peers. You're
Yes.
not do you know what I mean? You're just not even
Mhm.
aware yet
Yep.
of anyway, so
It's so true. And
mhm,
even like how peer contagion may play into the rise of teen girls transitioning. And I know we're talking about detransition, but
mm,
I think it's important to understand why people
mhm,
are detransitioning and to watch for future surges in detransitions because of cultural influence that's happening today.
mhm,
So, really, what we're doing is setting the stage for what's to come in the future.
mhm.
And parents, you got to watch out for this. You got to pay attention what's going on with your kids. Do not let them do stuff secretly without your consent. I'm telling you.
Absolutely. Well, there was a study from Psychology Today,
Mhm.
and it was only 100 respondents, but still, and two-thirds were women.
Well, I think I have that one. Go
Oh, do
ahead.
you?
I'm
Okay,
gonna I'm gonna
so
look and see.
So the survey asked them their reasons for detransition.
Mhm.
Do you have that one?
I don't
Maybe.
know if this is the study, but I think it might be.
So it was 60% had become more comfortable identifying as their birth sex. So they just wanted to be their birth sex. And 49% had medical complications.
Ah,
38% it hadn't resolved their psychological issues, and 23% struggled with sexual orientation issues rather than gender dysphoria, and another 23% were discrimination. But that
yeah.
60%, the majority, that they became more comfortable identifying as their birth sex. Well, to unpack that would be interesting because, why is that? because
Yeah.
it didn't solve the problem that they were trying to solve.
Right? That's
Yeah.
you hear so much of that. It's
Yeah.
so true. And
So,
honestly, like it's not just culturally, it's politically too.
oh yeah.
Like there's lots of fights and legislation happening
Oh,
right
yeah.
now to either, depending on what state you're in,
Yes.
either to ban body changes for especially for children.
Mhm.
I'm just pulling up some of these headlines because there's studies and a lot of articles about social contagion. That word kept coming up when I was doing my research. It was pretty interesting. Peer pressure. Here's another one: peer pressure in transgender teens. There's a lot of studies around that, and yeah, I'll remove that. And sorry if I interrupted you. I didn't
No,
mean
you
to.
didn't. Not at all.
Okay.
No, the headlines are good. They say a lot, and so
Oh,
we can't share every study, but there were quite a lot. Could we show the other Tucker video, or
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've got another one also.
Oh,
No. We're just doing a back and forth tonight. So yeah, Tucker. Oh, you mean
4A?
Laura?
Oh, maybe it's
You mean
4A.
Laura Ingram?
Oh, I forgot about that.
4A?
Yeah, it's Laura Ingram. You're right.
Okay.
4A.
Just want to make sure.
You're right.
4A, right? Okay.
To your personal case, you get a double mastectomy at age 15.
Yes.
Now what do you do? What are you doing now to try for your own care?
I mean, I've tried to reach out to all my doctors who got me into the situation in the first place. And the gender specialist who referred me to the surgeon just told me that the regret, this failed transition, is just another part of my gender journey. And after the surgery, I'm never going to be able to breastfeed children. And aside from that, I've had some complications pop up years post-op, and I haven't been able to get any help with that. I likely won't be able to be a candidate for any reconstructive surgery either.
So sad.
She is the gal that is suing Kaiser. Is a lawsuit, and that's a pretty high
that
power.
news just came out, didn't it?
Pardon?
Didn't that news just come out recently?
I'm not sure exactly when, but that gal, she's pretty well-known attorney, and I honestly think that we are going to have class action lawsuits coming. That's what I think. As soon as the first one goes down, and as soon as they win,
class action lawsuits can be very effective.
Very effective, absolutely. And so I think that's coming. And hey, do you want to show just those screenshots side by side, with the government influence? Because
yes.
it's so outrageous what the Biden administration is doing. So he's offering a 500,000 grant for English teachers in Pakistan to focus on transgender youth. That's okay. And then the other one is the State Department. I can't even. I don't have
spending tax dollars on transgender makeup entrepreneurs in Nepal.
Yeah, in Nepal. So of course they're exporting our dysphoria. What do they call it? Affirmation care. They're exporting it because the rest of the world is not buying it. And anyway, so
yeah, why are our tax dollars going towards this stuff?
That's a good question.
And honestly, even in prisons, it's going towards this type of thing. I'm gonna queue up another video. There is this person who I'll set it up first. This person who transitioned actually back in the 80s, so it wasn't a part of this new fad.
Okay.
Had regrets, and then detransitioned. But he talks. This is a YouTube video. It's very long, but I'm not going to show it very long. I'm just going to show a small thing. He does talk about the cultural influences that are happening, and yeah, I'll get it queued up here.
Okay.
Okay, I muted myself for a second. Sorry. All right, I'm going to cue this up, and we'll just play a little bit of it.
Out of a room in a heartbeat, and the focus is right on them, and they can get anything they want, can't they? Nobody calls them out. Nobody says, how'd you come to this conclusion? Well, we know how they came to the conclusion. Schools are giving them books. They're indoctrinating them. Parents are encouraging them. Online, they're in chat rooms suggesting groups of kids become transgender. It's a fad. Yes, there are people who are autogynephilia, but there's also people who are deeply troubled. Over 50% of the people that I've worked with, hundreds of people that I've worked with over the last 10 years, were sexually abused.
So I mean, he goes on, but I wanted to cover the fact that he says that they put the books in the schools, that they're doing it in groups. They're indoctrinating the kids. This is from, just FYI, if you want to find this whole video, because it's 13 minutes long. It's the Heritage Foundation called He Used to Be Trans. Here's what he wants everyone to know. I highly recommend you watch this video. His name is Walt Heyer.
He's
an
great.
author. Yeah, he's an author and public speaker. So
I watched a different interview
with him
yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And I almost gave you a clip. It's amazing how we don't share the clip, or we don't know what each other's going to share, but
no, we do individual research to prep for the show.
And that you played it. I'm so glad you did, because he really knows what's going on. I highly recommend listening to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and besides the cultural and political pushes on this, a lot of people have detransitioned, and it's interesting to see some of them and what their life is like after transition. And I think that gal that we played for you, Carrie, Chloe, she was talking about impacts to her post detransition. But do you have any thoughts on that, or have you watched other folks?
Well, I think that she's very brave, that young lady. And it's so great that she's taking something awful, evil, and using it for good. And we talked about that in our other episode. And that's what God does.
He takes that stuff that was used for evil and turns it around for good.
That's right. And I see what that young lady is doing. She's out there. She's, suing Kaiser. She's talking with others. She's speaking wherever she can. And so that's the best thing that, I've seen others that are really devastated and they're still really struggling. There's always heartbreak, but her story is one of the more positive. But my final thoughts, is just really thinking about this is all about our identity, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean
the overarching is our identity. I mean, so the question is our gender our identity? Is our job our title? Like, what is our identity?
That's a really that's a good question, because it could be a combination of everything, couldn't it?
Well, I mean, I see it as our identity has to do with our image, but only in the way that we were created in the image of God. We were created in his likeness. And so when I think of how, Psalms 139 reads that, It tells us that, how wonderfully made we are, and that he knew us when we were being formed in our mother's womb, and even before that, and that he is just intimately acquainted with us. And so that's why it's so obvious to me that this gender ideology is a lie from Satan to corrupt God's most beloved creation, and that's man.
Mhm.
And
It's very true.
we weren't designed. God made us with feelings and emotions, but we weren't designed to live by them. Feelings are a result, they're not a cause. And our culture today it teaches us.
Wait, can you back up? What does that mean? Feelings are a result and not a cause.
Well,
What does that mean?
they're a result of an action. You don't base your action on your feelings. They are what come after making a well thought out decision. Do you know what I mean?
Although a lot of people make decisions based off of their feelings.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Our culture today is teaching us to live by them. And, if it feels good, do it. And so no wonder we're in trouble. And I think
It
that's
feels good too. Yeah.
right.
And this kind of speaks to what we covered in our last episode about the serpent coming to Eve and saying, do as you please.
Yeah. I mean, it always comes down to it, because that's what it's all about. It is a spiritual battle between good and evil, at the core of this. And we know who is operating in the world right now, the Prince of Chaos. But these children are being manipulated, but based to change their gender based on their feelings, and neither the parents nor the professionals are explaining that feelings change. Feelings, they change, sometimes several times in a day, right?
Yeah.
And I
many
think
times in a day.
on our worst days. But we all want a life of purpose, and but I just see that it stems in a relationship with God, because we are a child of God. And so we were, from the very beginning, we were made to be in relationship with him. And yes, he's created an amazing world, a beautiful world, for us to enjoy. And he's given us moral laws to keep us safe. But, really how we were made, our chief aim is to know and be known by God. And our purpose, our fulfillment, our delight, our joy, it flows from that relationship. That's how I see it. And of course, with our family and, loving others, our friends, our family, or, so that's really what it's about. And Ecclesiastes 3:11, it reads, he has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. And I mean, I think that even people that maybe even don't believe in God, there's a sense that, we're more than just this flesh.
Yeah.
And I think we instinctively know that our souls are eternal, and that our relationship with God is also eternal. And yet we're trying to fill our lives with things that are created instead of the one who created everything.
A lot of society, it seems like they're trying to play God with many different things. They're trying to go against what is natural and good that God created. It's kind of interesting if you think about it.
Well, it's that battle again. I mean,
it is. We are in a battle currently.
What we're seeing on the surface is all the what, but if you just take that next step and start peeling that onion as to why, and when you get down to it, that's what it's all about. And my two favorite quotes, because I've quoted them before in episodes, but Blaise Pascal, the mathematician philosopher from the 17th century, and his quote is that there is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every person which cannot be filled by any created thing, but only by God the Creator.
Yeah.
And also St. Augustine of Hippo, from his work, the Confessions, from 398 AD, you have made us, O Lord, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. And you know, that's how I see it. It's spiritual. So
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the 100,000-foot view. So thank you for that, Carrie. I know I think you went into final thoughts, but I hadn't covered some of the life after
Oh
detransition.
dear. Oh, I'm
No, that's
sorry.
okay. I did want to highlight some people that actually are on Twitter so we can follow them and encourage them.
Oh, good.
Uh,
I'm gonna pull.
yeah, yeah. So let me make this a little bigger for you all. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. So this person is called Detrans Aqua, said we need more detransitioners to speak up. And she replied to, that's the same person with a different, is that the same person? Detrans Aqua. Yep. The reason more aren't speaking up is because they watch the ones of us who are public get death threats every day.
Yeah, I read that too.
Part of life after detransition, yes, there is some encouraging information that you can still have a nice, fulfilling life, even though it's going to be difficult. Speaking out, I think I highly recommend people speak out and not live in fear. We talked about that before, that never fear man. But that was one that I wanted to.
Yeah, she's amazing. I saw her in some interviews as well. She's amazing.
Yeah. And then another one, this is Ollie, who you had a clip of, says this is what happens when you go against the trans narrative. This is what every single detransitioner faces on a daily basis. This is what women who speak up face every day. It's wrong. And it says, here's somebody who said, I think Ollie London needs to be publicly executed.
Wow.
So these detransitioners are facing a lot of hate.
Well, it's a cult. Transgenderism, it's a cult.
Yeah. So I did want to cover that. And then for me, I also at the end here wanted to cover other resources. Number one, detransition hashtag on Twitter. You can go there and you can see all kinds of information. And also, there's another hashtag. Oh, what was it? It was about there's an affirmation generation one where you can get more information. And there is, I think there was one around having regrets. And that was a good hashtag too. But I think to support this community of people who have detransitioned, and that's quite a process, and I'm sure emotionally draining as well as physically draining. I just wanted to share that. But there's a couple of resources out there too. There is a website called Transgender Trend that has some resources on detransitioning, and another one called Sex Change Regret, which I actually pulled up some stats from. There's some really good posts and information on here as well that I wanted to share with people.
That's great.
Yeah. So with that, I guess my closing thoughts is, if you are struggling and going through transition, we're thinking about you. We're praying for you. We support you. If you're thinking about transitioning, please find out what's happened to people when they did transition physically, not just dressing up as that person, but literally taking hormones, having surgery. It's there was one girl who described it as they had a sense of euphoria that lasted a couple hours, and that was it. And then they had to face the reality of what they had done, you know.
Wow.
So don't take it lightly. Don't believe, you know, these teachers and people who will give your children hormones and send them on their transition journey with a 30-minute phone call.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
you
they
know,
really
I
need
don't
to
think there's
find-
any such thing as a trans kid. I really don't.
I
It
don't
doesn't
either.
exist,
I don't either.
you know.
I mean, I wore my brother's cowboy boots when I was, 4, and and I like to wear his little cowboy outfit. Can you imagine if my mom said,
Right.
"Oh, honey, maybe you're really a boy," or maybe, I mean, it's madness, I just liked his boots. I still like boots, but
Exactly. What if, you know, we had our family football games in the backyard because our family was big enough for that. You know, like we all played football, or we all ran around in the neighborhood and dug up worms and did
I was a total tomboy because I had 4 brothers.
crazy things.
Yeah.
I don't think I was a total tomboy, but you know, these days they would think their child is, and
Yeah.
it's just children are exploring and
Yeah.
learning about nature and science on their own, actually, which is very cool. And
But-
they have imaginations.
Mhm.
They
Back to what you were saying, that we need to pray for them. Absolutely. That's the first line of defense. And also, they really can't rely on the medical community, and they can't rely on other adults, in their schools. And, hopefully, I don't know about their parents, depending upon those situations, but they really need these groups that are being formed that you mentioned on Twitter. That's where they're going to get the support. I mean,
Yep.
that's right.
Absolutely. And I think we should go out there and just like encourage
And by people like us to,
Yep.
supporting them. Yeah.
Yeah, to just say, hang in there, praying for you.
Yeah.
Hello, we love you, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, any other thoughts before we say adios?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Please
Yes.
like our video, come see us on Rumble, subscribe. I'm not pushing YouTube and Twitter because we don't have a huge audience on there, and YouTube honestly has deleted some of our videos, but we will keep pushing it out there for people who are having issues if they access Rumble. But
Yeah.
we also post on Twitter, but
We have all our videos on Rumble, though, and you can go and look at other episodes.
oh, that's a good point. Yep. So thank you for your support, and we will see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
I can see clear.